name is Peter, and welcome to another video about sailing vessels Silverheels, my Rhodes 22. This is going to be a project video. Today is March the 12th, 2020, and we had a pretty mild winter, and it looks like we're having an early spring as well. So we're getting started earlier than I really thought I would be able to. And actually, I got started so early, I kind of forgot about making this video. So we're further along in the project than might be optimum, but I think it's going to work out. So the project that we're going to talk about first is this. This is my Anchor Road locker, or maybe Anchor Road bag would be a better term. So this is made out of sailcloth. It came from the 175 Genoa that I replaced last year. So my wife has fashioned this into a bag. It's kind of squarish bag. It's 9 inches on a side and about 18 or 19 inches long. And at the moment I've got that stapled to a piece of plywood that's about 8 by 8, and the staples really are only holding it temporarily, because next we're going to screw another 8 by 8 piece of plywood to that would pretty firmly clamp all those edges in place. So where this is going to live on the boat is under the cockpit combing, way in the aft corners of the boat. There'll be one to port and one to starboard. And so we've got a hole in the plywood here on the top, and there'll be a hole made in the combing. And this fitting will go on top of the combing, and the bag will go up underneath the combing, and screws will come down through the fitting and the combing to hold the top of the bag up. So, and this, of course, under the combing will hang down into the corner of the lazarette, where it really shouldn't be in the way. There's not much you can use that corner for, really. What we're going to do is make a little mock-up of this here in the shop. So we have our Anchor Road bag suspended here with this piece of plywood serving as a proxy for the top surface of the combing. A couple of details of the construction here is we do have some grommets. There's a couple on the side for ventilation and perhaps drainage, and there's one in the bottom that the bitter end of the Anchor Road can go through. And there's a zipper, which when I do the actual installation, I'll have to make sure that the zipper ends up where it'll be accessible. But there's a zipper so we can get to the inside of the bag. And we've got our Anchor Road here, which is 200 feet of 3/8 nylon. And we'll just run the Anchor Road into the bag. So the Anchor Road is in the bag, so to speak. If you look through our zipper on the side here, you can see that really the bag is only about half full. But you really couldn't fill it up all the way, because you need to have some drop, so the weight of the rope will pull it in. Anyway, you may notice I have some chain here on the end that's in a nylon sleeve, and I'll talk about that some more when I do a video on the whole anchoring system sometime this spring. And I've also, not the only time the chain would be in the bag is when I'm not sailing. So, but I don't want to lose the end, so I've got a ring attached to the end, so it can't, I can't lose it, and it can live like that. So I'm showing you this now because once I get these bags installed into the boat, they'll be a lot harder to see. So I thought it would work out better this way. But now we do have to go ahead and install them. So as I said, the next step is to attach the bags to the boat. And I've already gotten a start on that process, unfortunately, before I remembered I was going to make this video. So for the real live pieces, as opposed to the mock-up, we're using some pressure-treated 3/4 inch plywood. This is actually leftover from the original floor on the boat. And it's the same 8x8 size. And what I did was, on my boat, on the underside of the coaming, there's a piece of wood about 1/2 inch thick, it appears, that's fastened up there, which gave me a place where I could temporarily position this and screw it up under there, and then pick the spot on the surface of the coaming where I was actually going to want the fitting to go, and then drill down through the coaming and down through that piece of 1/2 inch wood and down into this piece of plywood, so that the location of that was a 1/4 inch pilot hole. I'm going to have all my holes line up that way. You'll notice I've got a piece missing here, some material removed. The coaming shape is a little irregular. There's a place where the aft cleat is mounted, and this material had to be removed to accommodate that. So the cleat is here, this is the hull, this is forward, and you can see the hole is not centered as it was in the mock-up. It's a little bit more outboard and a little bit further aft than that. So once I had that hole, I could take the piece out and make the larger 1 3/4 inch hole here, and line up my two pieces and make a corresponding hole in the bottom piece of plywood. And now that we've done that, we can attach the bag to the lower piece. So I've stapled the top edge of the bag to the lower piece of pressure-treated plywood. And when I did that, I made sure, because these pieces have a specific orientation, and I made sure that the side of the bag with the zipper is going to end up facing into the boat, because that's an important consideration. So now the upper piece just gets screwed to the lower piece, which will clamp the edges of the bag firmly between the two pieces, and then they need to go to the boat. The next step is to drill a 1 3/8 inch hole in, 1 3/4 inch hole in the coaming. So we have our deck fitting sitting in place, and what we have to figure out next is how to hold the bag up against the underside of the coaming while we drill holes and drive screws. into it. And I haven't tried this yet, but what we've got going on, we're going to try to hold it up with some rope. So we've got a piece of rope that's going down through the hole and then back here up through the lazarette and in the hole on the top of the bag. And then we've opened the zipper to get access to the end, and we've got that tied to one of those rings that's too big to pass through the hole. So we're going to try just maneuvering the bag into place and pulling up on that rope to hold it in place. And that worked. What do you know? So if we lift this out of the way, and well, it's probably not going to show up here too well, but I can see, especially if I run my fingers around in there, I can see that all my holes are pretty well lined up. The holes are 1 3/4, and the inside diameter of the fitting is actually only 1 1/2. So there's a little bit of leeway there, really. And so that rope runs up and over part of my arch and back down to a cleat here. For those of you without an arch, you could probably put a 2x4 across the aft railing, or maybe just use the aft railing itself. Anyway, so the next step is we'll decide on an alignment here, which would probably be something like that with the opening facing forward, and start drilling some holes and driving some screws. So there's our fitting screwed into place, with the screws not only holding the fitting but holding up the whole bag apparatus. So it'll be a little dim in there, but I'll show you what it looks like in the lazarette. Alright, so it's kind of hard to see much in here, but here is the bag in the lazarette hanging down to about the level of the drainage tube for the cockpit seat. And I guess it could have been an inch shorter or so. That would have been alright. But I think it's going to work out alright. You know, when I first was coming up with this idea, I initially thought I'd build some kind of hard-sided compartment, and couldn't figure out how to even begin on that. And then the bag idea occurred to me, because it's very irregularly shaped in here. So I'm glad I stumbled on this approach. We'll put the road in the bag and see if it looks any different. Well, with the road in the bag, it really doesn't look any different. It is putting more weight here on the cockpit seat drain pipe than I would like. So I probably will go ahead and kind of undo this and shorten the bag by an inch or two to avoid that situation. So we've got the bitter end of the road here tied off in the lazarette to this fiberglass construct, whatever that's for. And that's about it. So, and up top, we just have the end of the chain here, which we can let fall into the bag, and put the ring like that to finish it all off nicely. And I installed the second anchor road bag and deck fitting on the starboard side using pretty much the same process. This video is already long enough, really, so I thought I'd limit myself to just one more quick project that I took on this winter. This one relates to my whisker pole. If you've watched my sailing videos, you know I use this quite a bit. And I have really two issues with the locking mechanism. The way it comes from force bar, it has what's called a twist lock mechanism. So you would extend it to whatever length you'd like, and you rotate the two pieces relative to each other, and they lock into position. The first issue that I have with that, I've had since the beginning, since it was new, and that is there's really no way to control what the relative orientation of the two ends will be at the point where it locks. So optimally, you want the two ends to face the same way. You know, that one is pointed down and this one is pointed down. And it'll work all right, you know, if they're 180 degrees from each other. I can make that work. But often they would lock at some strange angle relative to each other, which just made life somewhat difficult. The second problem, which just started happening this last season, is that the lock would slip. It wouldn't hold reliably. So over the course of the day, the whisker pole would get shorter and shorter, which is not good. So what I've done to address that issue is I took the whisker pole apart and basically removed that twist lock mechanism from it. And instead of that, I drilled some holes, and I'm going to use a pin to control the length of the whisker pole. So there's a set of holes here that, there we go, used to fix it in its short configuration for storage. And a set of holes down here that will lock it in its extended configuration with the two ends in the proper orientation relative to each other. So as with the Anchor Road bag project, can't really be sure how well this is going to work out in real life until we get to sailing season. And that's at least a couple of months away. So, well, time will tell. All right, that'll cover it for this video. Thanks for watching.